Conversation. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Julie.
And today we are talking about the rhythm. The rhythm, what do we mean by the rhythm?
The rhythm. Well, we were just talking about songs this morning.
Oh my gosh, I've had the same song in my head stuff for like 3 weeks. It's the worst.
So I think you know the rhythm better than I do, but just going to say. I mean, the rhythm is just the process, right? It's one meeting, one quarter, 60 minutes, repeat. It's having an established process, a system, a way to work through work.
Yeah, and making sure that you're doing this on a continuous basis. I think many people are aware of topics like continuous improvement and different systems like that. If you're running EOS, you know about your quarterlies. Right? The most successful companies, right? They undertake change in a systematic, disciplined way. They understand it's never done. And this is no different.
Right.
So when we're talking about the rhythm, we're talking about how you start to actually compound your AI initiative. It's not because you've done one sprint and then you're done. You're like, all right, guys, we got it. AI's figured out. We are masters of AI. That is not how this works.
No.
Right. In fact, it's got to become part of your operational discipline.
Right. And I would say culture, right? I mean, like HR has known this for a long time, right? Like there's that cultural piece. And, you know, I always find it interesting because like processes don't usually drift because people stop caring. And so, I mean, that's where like it is a cultural rhythm to say that this is the way we get work done. I don't all of a sudden just stop caring. Like some people do, you know, I mean, it happens in work cycles, right? But I mean, you just don't stop caring. It's just that we don't have it embedded to the culture in the way in which we do things. I think, but you know, EOS of today, Rockefeller habits of the 90s, maybe? I can't remember.
I think they're theoretically still a thing, but
yeah, I'm sure they are. But you know, I mean, it's having that habit that's bedded into your culture that happens so that progress and deliverables and thought processes don't drift, because without that, they drift.
That's right. And so over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about how do you put together a sprint. We've talked about systems and tools for identifying signals, identifying your sources, designing your work, building it, deploying it, and then now we're at the compound flywheel. When we talk about the rhythm, what we're talking about is going through that process on a continuous basis or a continual basis. Now, for every company, it's going to be a little bit different because every company has its own operating rhythms. I tend to think about this on a quarterly basis. I tend to think for a lot of companies looking at your backlog or your list of projects every quarter is probably about the fastest many can do and do it well. At least that's been my experience. But whatever it is, having some idea of your catalog or your backlog of things you will be working on, this based on the signals you've identified, and saying, okay, every quarter, when we do our quarterly or whatever it is, we're going to be looking at the backlog and we're going to be evaluating the outcomes that we expected to get. We're going to add new signals to the backlog, and we're going to continue to work iteratively through these sprints over and over and over and over again. Super boring. Right? It sounds super boring. Like everybody wants the shiny, the shiny thing, but there is no GLP-1 for AI development, or for implementation and changing the workforce. It's funny, I was reading an article the other day, and it was another survey by, I think it was Deloitte in this particular case, and they had put out an interview, and something like 74% of the people they interviewed knew that the work was going to have to change, but yet only 50% of them felt like they were going to be able to redesign the work around agents. And even a smaller percentage felt like they were prepared to move down that path because they don't yet have that operational discipline. They haven't yet built the infrastructure to make this happen. And I think what people are realizing is that when you take old work and new agents, you don't get outcomes, right? New work and new agents is not a new operating model.
Right.
It's just, what is the word you've used before to talk about doing the design without deploy? I mean, that's what it is, right? It's
Yeah,
design.
that's what I was just gonna say. I was like, that's, you've got to design before you deploy, right? You really just have to. And I think when we think about AI, and we talk a lot about, is it a technology problem? Like we talk about AI and we all say, oh, it's a technology problem. But when you embed AI specifically just within the IT arena and something happens, right? It's a systems problem.
Yeah.
Right? So we all of a sudden say, okay, it's a system problem. AI is having this issue, it's a system problem. But if we think about the importance of embedding the AI movement for each organization within a leadership and in a cultural space, right now it's a capabilities problem. And so when we identify that there's a capability problem, like we can help with that. Like, you can come in from a workforce perspective and say, we can help with that because we can develop capability. But when we just have it over here and it's not bubbled up from a leadership capacity and it's kept down here as a systems problem, we're still not going to see that compounding effect that we need to see, which, if we think about compound, when we go in with clients, it's an intensive first 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? And that's intentionally. It's the rhythm, right? It's what it takes to shift mindset. It takes to shift rhythms within the organization, patterns of doing work. And so you have to go in very intensively and start with that and say, okay, now we've got this into a rhythm, and then compound. When we get to the 6th step of compounding, then we can step back a little bit because we've taught them how to fish.
Yep.
And now we can coach and evaluate. But you have to be intentional about that rhythm. I have to say, I was just driving here this morning talking to a client, and we're working on a new project, and it's high volume, high impact, can't slip. And so we just started working on this a couple of days ago. And the first thing I said is, we're meeting every day. Every day we will be on a 30-minute call. And you could tell it's like, every day I kind of have to talk to you every single day. And you're like, yes, because we don't have a rhythm. Because if we had a rhythm, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
Right. And so it's the way you've got to get that institutionalized.
So how do you run through this? Well, there's 4 steps. Okay. First thing you want to do is look at your previous sprint at the outcome level. So if you've been following a process, you will have done a sprint plan, you will have identified, and in that sprint plan, you would have identified your signals, you would have started cataloging your sources, you'd have designed some work, you would have built something, you would have deployed it. And all of that, there should have been some goal that you intended to accomplish when you put that process together. So the first thing you want to do is evaluate, like, did we accomplish the goal?
Right.
And if not, what outcomes did we get? Okay. So step 1 is review the previous sprint at the outcome level. Step 2 is then to update the signal backlog. Now, I'd love to tell you that every single sprint, if you follow this process, you're going to get exactly the outcome you want and exactly the way you wanted to do it in exactly the time frame. It doesn't really happen like that in reality.
No.
Right? And in fact, what happens more often than not is that you go through the process, you get an outcome, it's generally going to be directionally correct, but you're then going to unlock or uncover a whole lot of other things that you need to work on. Now, if you're not disciplined, what'll end up happening is you'll get distracted by those things and you'll start trying to tackle those things mid-sprint. You should not do that.
Right.
Instead of trying to tackle those things mid-sprint, those need to get to the backlog. And this quarterly rhythm is the right time to now look at that backlog, to look at the things that were kicked off during that sprint and say, okay, we're moving in the direction of our outcome. All of these other things happened. And so now we're going to update the signal backlog with the things that came up during that sprint or that we observe now. Step 3 is then to start to commit the next sprint. Now, if you've gone through a process of ranking your backlog or ranking your signals, then the next, starting to do the next ranking is just a repeat of what you've already done before. Right. And the question is, well, what still has the highest business value? Where is there still the most amount of impact? How do I reprioritize the list? We're all used to prioritizing lists. We all do that all the time. Right. And so now step 3 is to do that. And then you want to make sure that in that quarterly rhythm, you're also updating the hybrid accountability chart. One of the things I was reading, and I don't remember where I read this from, but one of the biggest problems that people have when it comes to AI implementation is that they don't have a great unified data foundation, and they don't have a good framework for governance. I think it was something like 72% of the people surveyed in this particular, I think it was might have been Cloudera. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up and we can post it in the notes. But 72% of them said they realized when they started going through this that the lack of a unified data foundation and the knock-on effect of not being able to trust the governance around agents was a significant blocker to being able to implement things. Right? And the hybrid accountability chart exists to solve that problem. And I'll say this because this has actually been my biggest problem. You start making all this progress, you start running, and then you realize, God, we have all of this data in all of these places. They don't connect to each other. The governance around them is very, very different. And that can be even more the case if you're in a regulated industry.
Right.
And so you want to make sure that as part of your rhythm, you are updating that hybrid accountability chart, and that you're being deliberate about keeping your sources, your agents, and the people responsible documented. Again, not sexy. Nobody wants to do that work. But it's so important if you want to start compounding.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're not identifying that, then like you said, you're going to get distracted. Like that's the first thing that's going to happen. And it happens all the time. I mean, even when you just sit in meetings and you watch meeting cadence, it's really interesting to watch how meetings go all over the place. So having that and being very intentional, that's why in Compound, we talk about the signal, the signal and the source. Those steps are so critical because what we're trying to do, we're not trying to make it through the workshop, right? I mean, if you say Compound, it's a framework. We're not trying to make it through the workshop. We're trying to change the way we're doing and thinking about the work.
Yes.
And that's not easy, but it's necessary to create compounding effect. It absolutely is necessary. And yes, it's not sexy, but it has to be done because otherwise your outputs, you're the old thing, what is it? Garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
Right? That is still going to happen with AI. AI is not the magical pixie dust that we just sprinkle and then all of a sudden we're just like superhumans and can produce output at like 10x than we ever been done before, nor organizationally. And especially if you want organizational change, like that is where the big difference, like when we talk to people now, and it was just a conversation I had earlier in the week, when you talk to people now, they're implementing their AI, right? Yes, I am using AI at work.
Yeah.
I'm using it. So yes, we're using it. We're not
But
using
most people,
it.
when they say that, what they mean is they're using a chatbot.
Exactly. And that's not we're using it. That's not organizational use of AI. And that's where following the framework, having a rhythm, getting into the discipline, doing the stuff that's not the fun stuff to do, but doing those things is where you're going to compound.
Yeah, I think this is such an interesting point because you're right. When I talk to people as well, everyone at this point, so it used to be the case, I would go and I would do a talk, 2 years ago, and I would say, who here is using AI? And maybe 5 or 10% would raise their hand, and of those people, all of them are using ChatGPT.
Right.
Right. Now I go into a room and and now everyone's raising their hand.
Yes.
And instead of it just being ChatGPT, it's ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or whatever. But most people are still thinking about AI usage as a chatbot.
Yes.
And you are pairing a human with a chatbot. And that is a legitimate use of AI for a lot of different kinds of work.
Sure.
But the real value, the compounding value that you get out of AI is when you start to redesign the work.
Yes.
And you start to move this stuff into your infrastructure.
Correct.
And that is a very different way of thinking about AI. It's not the way most people, I think, at the moment, are thinking about
I would
AI.
completely agree. I would completely. When you say, are we using AI? The answer, like you said, is almost always yes now. But I'm going to say we're almost like using it individually and selfishly, right? So that our output is better or faster. But we're
So
not.
it's faster. I wouldn't say it's always better.
Yeah. Our perception, right? But like it might be but we're using it in our individual work. We're not thinking about it from an organizational rhythm.
Right.
We're thinking about how do we as individuals use AI. I think that is predominantly where we're at right now.
And so the question that I keep asking now is like, have you graduated from a chatbot? Because if your intention or your usage of AI is still very much chatbot based,
Yes.
then you're probably only getting 30 or 40% of the value out of AI that you could theoretically get inside of your operations. Problem is like that other next part of the value isn't something you can just iterate back and forth. And the consequences become greater.
Oh, sure.
It's one thing for me to use AI to use my terms clearly. It's one thing for me to use the Claude chatbot to write an email.
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing to use an API to automate my support queue. It's a different thing to use a different AI model to automate my project management. It's a different thing to use a different AI model to manage a procurement.
Or my financials.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right?
And so I think this, though, is where that value of AI starts to get a little bit higher. And I think when in that Deloitte survey, when people are realizing, hey, we know we have to design our work around agents, but we're not prepared. I think it's because what most, I'll say at least enterprise users at this point are realizing is that the power of AI, it supersedes chatbots considerably, but as you bring it deeper into the infrastructure, deeper into your systems, the quality of your data, your ability to govern, your ability to manage, all of those things start to change dramatically.
Right.
Because you're getting to a much more sensitive layer of data. The upside, the deeper you go in your system stack, the more leverage there is.
Sure.
But the more risk there is too.
Oh, sure. It continues. I mean, the complexity of the work compounds as well, right? I mean, you're going to continue to say, okay, if we can do this, then we can do this. But the complexity and the risk, it grows. And so, that's where, a lot of times we talk about the human versus the AI interaction, right? So that is the point where we cannot use AI without that human orchestrator, we call it human orchestrator, but the human judgment, right? You have to have that human orchestrator in there to be able to review with wisdom, to be able to call on, you can have the financials drafted perhaps, to get it into some format and kind of pull some source data together. But you better be able to have the wisdom to look at that and say, yes, that's right. But you can't just rely on it as a data source.
Yeah, that's why the design piece is so important.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Because you do need that judgment to be able to understand what the work and the workflow should look like. The patterns for this are also becoming really clear as well, right? So whether it's McKinsey, whether it's Deloitte, whether it's Uber, across the board, the sort of recognized convergence or across the board, there is thought leadership convergence on the idea that AI is not explicitly an IT problem or solely an IT problem, that the best companies, what they're doing is they're training AI champions, AI engineers, whatever it is, and then they're deploying them into the operations. So those people can sit alongside the subject matter experts, and they're working hand in glove with the subject matter experts to redesign the work or to redesign the processes in order to make life easier for the subject matter experts. By the way, that's also how you're getting buy-in from subject matter experts. Because at that moment, when you're working hand in glove with someone and you realize, okay, Julie, here you are in HR, we're going through all the list of things that cause friction for you and frustration for you in your job. We're putting them in the Signal backlog. We're making the backlog. I'm asking you all these questions. Okay, tell me about the HRIS. Does this have an API? Does it have an MCP? Let's identify all the sources. What domain knowledge do you have? And then how do we design a flow to say, okay, you really hate dealing with job descriptions and recruiting. Well, let's go ahead and build let's design a flow that would allow us to reduce the overhead that comes with doing that. And you're like, great, I would love to get back 10 hours of my life every week, right? So that's 10 times 50 hours a year of not having to do job descriptions for recruiting or whatever that thing is, right? So let's design that together. Then let's go ahead and build a prototype of what that would look like. And then you, as I get ready to deploy it, you tell me, does this meet your needs? Is this helping you get your job done better? You say, yeah, this is great. Now we've deployed the thing, but in doing that, we also realized, the other thing that's really kind of annoying to manage is, exit interviews. Like that really sucks, right? And so how do we then, so you're going to now start asking me about this because you're seeing the power of AI in this one thing.
Exactly.
So say, hey, Julie, that's really, really great. Let's put that on the backlog.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, let's stay focused here. And this is, and I feel like we say it every time. I think we do. But this is design before deploy.
Yes.
And it's so critical. And another thing I'm just going to say from a leadership perspective, and maybe to tie back into that culture a little bit, is when you're doing these things, even when you get to deploy, sometimes we have to identify the fact that stopping something at whatever stage it is takes courage. Like we've all sat back, and I'd say probably more in an HR seat, you watch sometimes projects that are just like running, and you're like, I'm not really sure 100% what's going on there, but it sure doesn't seem like it's heading in the right direction. And the more you watch it, you're like, there's somebody there who doesn't have the courage to say stop. And so that's one of those important things when we think about design before deploy, is if we're going through that and you're gaining this wisdom, there's times where you're just going to have to say, well, wait a minute, stop for 1 second, because that's not resonating. Or like you said, I'm going to think of something else. Great, put it on the backlog. But the rhythm of keeping the focus on that and being able to have the courage to, maybe it's not stop, but ask really good, insightful questions so that the design or designer has the information that they need. I mean, that's really one of those important things that you've got to say, okay, that's got to happen too.
And so we go through this process. We've now implemented AI into this one part of your system. Now at the quarterly, at the quarterly review, now we want to look at this and say, okay, we were able to successfully automate the creation of job descriptions at scale, but we can only do it in this department, not this one, because we feel like this one's different for some reason. I don't know what that reason might be. You would know better than I would. But the point is like we get to the point, we realize, okay, we've evaluated the outcome. We were able to automate here, but not there. During the course of that sprint, you asked me about exit interviews. You asked me about, what other kinds of things. That's all now on the backlog. So we now say, okay, now given the backlog, we've got exit interviews, or we could optimize in this department over there, or maybe we need to start looking at behavioral analysis. I don't know, right? But now that's what that second step is for. It's to say, all right, we looked at the outcome. We accomplished this much of our goal. Now we're going back to the backlog. You identified these 3 or 4 other things. We've enumerated them. And then we say, okay, well, you know what? It turns out that this one specialized area where we couldn't get the job descriptions just right isn't really as important as streamlining our exit interview process. So that one now gets the next sprint, regardless of the fact that, yes, we've made some momentum, we've made some progress on this one front. Our human judgment at the rhythm, at the review point, is to say, well, yeah, we've hit kind of the Pareto optimum here. We've hit our 80%, where we're good here. Let's go work on something else. Now, if we follow this process, you, by the way, especially after the first sprint, now you, as the subject matter expert who I work hand in glove with to make this happen, you, by the way, you now have buy-in. You helped to build the backlog. You're seeing your work transform. You were part of the design. You were part of the deployment, right? You're now seeing the benefit. And so you are now excited
Right.
about the next sprint. You're no longer afraid. You're no longer worried AI is going to take your job. In fact, what you're seeing is, gosh, I don't have to spend 10 hours working on 10 hours a week working on this job description. I can actually spend now that 10 hours doing something else. I can start now thinking about improving our training,
Right.
right? Which
Right.
I've never been able to get to that because I'm always spending all my time on these, stupid job descriptions.
Right.
But now I've got 10 hours I can focus on new training. Okay, so let's go through. So the next sprint we go through and figure out how to make your exit interviews better. And now you've got 15 hours a week net started.
Mhm.
So in that next sprint, in that next rhythm, you say, gosh, now I've got 15 hours a week to focus on new training. Man, what if we build some really cool training content or whatever that particular
Right.
thing is?
Right.
But that's what the rhythm is buying you.
Yes.
The rhythm is buying you the recognition that you will get if you go through this process and you're working hand in glove with your subject matter experts and they're contributing to the design and ultimately to deploy, they're getting buy-in, you're making their lives easier, your outcomes are getting better, your signal backlog continues to grow. By the way, they're feeding it.
Yes. Yes.
And
yeah.
you're now together working on that next sprint and outlining the next sprint. Well, you start going from 10 hours a week for that one person to 15 hours to 20 hours. All of a sudden, before too long, that person's entire job is completely different. It's all focused on high value human
Yes.
work.
Yes.
It's all focused on the things that get you more human leverage. It's not so much focused anymore on the mundane data entry task things
Right.
that AI can do very, very, very well. Your hybrid accountability chart is going, so the person is seeing their
Right.
role change
Right.
in real time as you're getting more and more leverage out of those things that are authentically
Right.
human. And
Right.
that is the value of having a rhythm for going
Yes.
through your sprint.
Well, and that's the point when the work, the non-sexy, crappy work that you didn't want to do in this process, that's when it becomes sexy. It's like, okay, now I get why I spent this time here. Like it didn't sound fun in the beginning, but that gain of 10 hours, that gain of 15 hours, like I can take more of that all day long. And so therefore I'm willing to do the work and design before deploy.
And by the way, as a leadership team, one of the things you do want to be prepared for, especially if you're going to take this seriously, is what do you do with that 10 or 15 hour
Right,
surplus?
right.
I was reading another report. I think this one was from McKinsey, and it was I think maybe from their own internal pilots. And one of the things that surprised them was they were able to free up all this time, but employees didn't know what to do with the freed up time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so so the leadership was like, oh, we didn't think about what we do with all of that
Mm-hmm.
free time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of run into this myself. Now I've started playing more golf, but that is something you want to start thinking about is
Right.
when you start to free up that time, how are you going to redeploy
Sure.
that? And on a more serious note, I mean, for us internally, it means more product development. It means we get to start investing in and building things that I've always wanted to get to, but we're sitting behind, I don't know, support tickets and project management
Right.
and all the other crap that we have to do,
Right.
but, is not as interesting, at least not to me,
Mhm.
as some of the other things, right? So being aware of that as you're getting this kind of organizational buy-in, as you're changing the work, if this is successful, I should say really when
Yes.
this is successful, you're going to have another problem, which is what do you do with the surplus?
Right.
Because
right.
that will happen.
Well, and it's going to shift your organization. Like I would say, and again, we find this all the time. Everyone's having AI conversations right now. And what I find really interesting in talking to people when you start getting into an AI conversation, there's a difference between an AI conversation and AI discipline. And so, having this framework and going through this process is going to shift your organization into having that AI discipline, the rhythm,
Mhm.
versus let's just talk about AI. And now there's AI conversations all over the place right now. It's probably the most predominant conversation in any meeting you go to.
Yes.
But it is a AI conversation. it's not talking about how do we create AI discipline, i.e. rhythm, framework in our organization to optimize.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is also because we still think of AI as something sort of other.
Yes.
You know, I've said before, and I believe this to be true, that before long, AI is going to be as ubiquitous as Excel, right? There isn't a single company, probably even a single department any longer that can't operate without Excel or some form of a spreadsheet.
Right.
Right.
Well, it's these things, right? We can't survive without these things anymore.
Your phone?
Yes. So it's going to be the same thing from an AI perspective. That's where we're going with it, like Excel. Right?
And so I think as a skill that workers will have to have, I think is how I was thinking through it, is every single department needs to have somebody who's good at Excel. I think it's going to be the case that every single department is going to have somebody who's good at AI. I've said...
They'll say more about what good at AI means. I'm curious.
I think means somebody who can manage and run a pod. So that person who sits down next to subject matter experts and can help with the design and the deployment.
Okay, right? I completely agree. Because I think when I was having this conversation the other day, and the person was like, "No, I'm really good with AI," and so I was like, "Oh, I'm curious. Tell me more," right? And they're like, "I have a cloud and I have a chat and it's that bot experience still." Yes. But I think right now, that's another period that we're at organizationally and just like work-wise, is that we think we're good at AI. One could question, if you think about it in just that way, how can I not be good at AI? I just have to push a button and talk to it or type a sentence, but how could I not be good at it? But that's, I had this conversation, like, no, I'm really good at AI.
Tell me, I remember back in, years ago when I would interview people, they would tell me they're good at Excel.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, tell me.
Can you write a macro? Well, write one, right? Yeah.
And they'd be like, well, I know a lot of formulas. Well, okay, well, if you can't write a macro or you don't know I haven't used Excel in a very, very long time. I remember at one point there was was it like Visual Basic or whatever it was inside of Excel? I don't remember what programming language was. That's how long it's been. Now I use Google and AppScript, right? So, but yeah, I remember that. Lots of people would tell me they're good at Excel, but they didn't actually know how to, but they meant that they were slightly better than average at formulas.
Right.
And when you talk about people using chatbots and they're like, I'm really good at AI, I'm like, oh, maybe you're like above average prompter.
Right.
But if you don't know how to do API integrations and you aren't sure how to move work through these things in a governed, safe way. It's kind of like, I know how to. I know what SUMIFA is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I didn't mean to take you off topic, but I just think it's like, I completely agree. You're going to need somebody in the organization who is good at AI.
Not only the organization, in the department.
In the department,
It's got to get down to that level. It's got to get down to the level where this is in your DNA, that there's somebody whose job, for a lot of companies, when they need to do a model, a spreadsheet, there's somebody that they go to that says, hey, can you do a sensitivity analysis on A, B, C, and D? And not everybody knows how to do that well in Excel.
Right, which is fine, but you have the person.
But you have the person who you can go and ask them to do a sensitivity analysis, and they understand how to organize the workbooks. They understand how to set up the references. They understand how to do all the naming. They know how to write the formulas and the functions. They know how to write a macro when that's appropriate. That's what I mean by everyone's going to have people that are good at Excel.
And I knew what you were saying, but I was like, if I'm listening and I think about some of the conversations, they're like, I'm really good at it. And you're like, okay.
I'm above average prompter.
Right. But tell me how, right? Because I think that is interesting, because you do feel good when you get a good result back and you go, I must be pretty good at this because look what just came back.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about when we say every department. It is every department. I misspoke, but it's every department's going to need that resource.
Yes.
Because that's again what's going to get the big mass and the backlog starting to happen at a quicker pace.
And I do think to your point though, that every employee, will have to be good at chatbots. And I think we're seeing that. One of the things I was reading somewhere else was that Actually, I'll even take something I was reading. I'll take an actual lived experience. I was at Best Buy the other day, and one of my students from MSU, who was a junior, is now becoming, is going to be a senior in the upcoming year. He had just gotten back from Ireland, where he had done his summer internship. And he was working for a wearables startup in Dublin. And they had asked him to come in, and he was going to be doing some marketing and some investor relations work for them. And part of the reason that he had been hired is because he had taken my course, and so he, knew a lot about AI. Right now, when he got there, what they thought he meant by knew a lot about AI was he was a good prompter, but he knows how to do workflows because that's what I taught him in the class. And so he was telling me, I ran into him at Best Buy because he's back now getting ready for the semester, and he's like, they were blown away because they had a project for me that they were expecting to take 3 weeks, and I got it done in 2 hours.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And so he was telling me about all these other experiences that he got, all this other work they started giving him because they realized he could operate at this design level. He could operate at this data level in a way that they weren't expecting. And as a result, they were able to deploy this kid in a way that got them way outsized results for a normal intern that they might have brought on. And I think what's happening is that a lot of young people are picking up these skills and picking them up relatively quickly, not as quickly as some might like. But I think what you're starting to see is as they start to enter the workforce, this is going to become a really, really significant competitive advantage, a really significant way that they'll be able to contribute. And so if you are somebody who doesn't have that capacity or that capability, or you're not even sure you can train it up, I would encourage you to start thinking about and looking for young people who might have this experience, or reach out, and I'll introduce you to some of my students. Well, because even at Michigan State, last semester I taught a course of 20 kids. This next semester we're looking to grow to 40, and then the following one will take to 80. So we're trying to even compound what we're doing there because it's so effective and so helpful.
Right. And that is going to be so important, as getting that skill and finding that person is just going to be critical to organizations. So I mean, it's great that they have access to that class, right?
Yeah.
Because people don't understand what it can do until they see it. Remember that meeting we were on? We were on a call together last week, and we were like talking about a particular workshop. And while we were talking, within the course of 20 minutes of talking about this, I was just kind of like typing some notes over here. And, before we even got off the call, I was like, so is this what we're talking about? Shazam, like a brand new flyer, completely written based upon what our conversation was. And it was just by like typing some things in while we were talking. And, as silly as that little one was, the people that were on the phone afterwards are like, how did you do that? Like, and you're like, it's this guy, right? It's just like, it's just what you do. Like once you get the processes, if you want to say, even embedded within your own framework, right? It's not like your work compounds, but think about the impact of that when we spread that across an organization. Take the one person who got put into that organization and take it into an organization where they have a framework, a 6-step framework that is very followable, easy to do. It's followable and doable and compoundable. And now you've got multiple of those employees who understand how to do this, and just think about what can happen.
You said another thing that I want to underline too, because this is one of the reasons, or one of the ways when we were engineering the compound framework, the word you used was embedding it in your own operations. One of the ways when we thought through this that we were really intentional is that we don't want this to be something that is an either or.
Correct.
It's got to be something that you can embed in your own operation. So if you're running Rockefeller Habits or Scaling Up, or you're running EOS, or you're running any of these other systems, this is not a substitute or a replacement.
No, it is the frosting on the top. It is the next level up.
That is right.
Yes.
That's right. It works alongside what you're already doing.
Yes.
It does not replace it. In fact, I don't know if it's on camera or not, but like I've got my EOS workbook right behind me. Actually, it might even be.
Oh, it is.
don't know.
I think it is.
There
Yeah, yeah.
I've got my EOS. Like, we still run
Right.
our day-to-day EOS on EOS. We still have our issues list. We still have our accountability charts. We still have all of those things that we use. With the work we're doing with Compound, the framework that we have sits on top of it,
Yes.
and it works in conjunction with it. So this is not an either or. I don't want to leave people with the impression that this is going to replace. It gets embedded.
Yes.
It doesn't replace anything. It gets embedded into what you're already doing. And in fact, if you're already running, I'm thinking about one of the people we talked with recently. They're already running EOS. They're doing a great job. They're firing on all cylinders. In fact, they're the perfect person to work with a Compound system because they've already got the discipline. They've already got the accountability. They're already thinking in terms of systems. They're already thinking in terms of processes. They've already got traction. Right? They're already healthy.
Right.
And so you do something like EOS, or you have or whatever it is. You've got a healthy organization. This supplements that organization and starts to take it to the next level.
Yes.
Now, I do believe that it's going to become something that everyone's going to have to be supplementing with before too long.
Oh, I agree.
But if your organization is not running well, this will be harder to do. But it's not designed to compete with what you're already doing. It's designed to augment what you're already doing.
Right. Well, and the thing is when you listen to our Compound conversations, there's, even if you just think about this rhythm piece, like okay, now, well, what do I do next? Just have a meeting, like schedule a meeting to start thinking about how do we do this framework. It's one meeting, and we can walk people through that, and we can say, okay, this is how this would work. And I think it's just so important because we can continue to say we've got to do something. I've got to do something. That's what everybody tells us. I've got to do something with AI. I've got to do something with AI. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's just talk about that. Let's talk about how this becomes embedded into your organization and how you can actually optimize your AI and have it become a discipline instead of just a systems problem in your IT department.
Yeah, and I think having this frame also starts to demystify it. I was giving a talk recently to a group, and one of the things that I kind of kept hearing and I was sort of intuited is that it's super overwhelming. It feels like a lot.
Right.
But when we started going through this, and I said, okay, do you have somebody in your organization who really likes AI? Who is the one telling you should be doing all the cool things that you should be doing, and they're thinking about this. And most people are like, yeah, we've got a person like that.
Right.
Okay, that person, they probably don't know all of your departments, right? But you know all your departments, your department managers know your departments. So if that person has some training in how to think about a system, how to think about AI systematically, not just in terms of what they see on YouTube or TikTok.
Right.
And they could just sit one-on-one with somebody in your department. Do you think those two people in your company could come up with a reasonable set of things that they think could be improved?
Yes.
Okay, that's not particularly intimidating.
Right.
What gets intimidating is when we start thinking about the
deployment.
The deployment.
Right.
Before we are thinking about the backlog and the sources and the design, then it's super intimidating and it's super overwhelming. But I promise you, if you're listening to this and I would say, hey, do you have any problems in your business where there is friction? Yeah. How many do you want?
Right, exactly. How long do you have? Yeah.
And do any of those problems require a person to touch a computer? Yeah.
Right.
Like those are two very easy questions.
Exactly.
So if you're sitting on a meeting, just start with those two questions.
Right.
Do we have any friction? And do any of them require a computer?
Right.
Those are the first two steps of starting to move down this path. And then the rest of it just starts to become new ways to approach removing that friction by streamlining some of those systems.
Yeah. It's not, and it can be it doesn't have to be, like you said, intimidating. It doesn't have to be, but you've got to start somewhere.
Right.
And that's, when we always talk to people, it's like, let's start with the source. Let's start with the one thing, right? But we've got to start somewhere, or otherwise we're just going to keep doing something and we're not going to get to the place that we want to be.
And I think beginning to realize that AI in your organization is not about a chatbot.
No.
A chatbot is one use.
Exactly.
It is one way to work with AI, and it's a valid way
Right.
to work with AI in many organizations for many types of work.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not the only way,
Right.
and I would argue it's not even the most high leverage way.
I was going to say, like, it is a way. So you're absolutely right. I think it's because we're thinking that that's what I'm using AI is in some respects right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the disconnect is between we're using AI and we're not seeing the P&L impact.
Yeah.
That's a big piece of that, because we spent the money for the subscriptions for the AI,
Mm-hmm.
for the chatbot usage. And so it is a usage and it does help. We all use it. It's wonderful,
Yes.
right? But it is not where you start seeing the P&L impact. And so that's why people are going, well, wait a minute, we're putting this money into AI, but we're not seeing the P&L impact. Well, we're using it as an individual accelerator, not an organizational tool, discipline.
That's right. So, the compound system designed to be embedded into your existing system. Like all healthy systems, it should be run on a rhythm and on a cadence regularly. I suggest quarterly. Might be a little more, might be a little less, depending on your organization or whether you're using EOS or something else. That's going to be a call for the management team to figure it out. But it's got to get on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
The way that this works is so almost boring. You've got your 6 steps of identifying your signals, mapping them to sources, designing work, ideally with somebody that understands AI workflows, working hand in glove with subject matter experts,
Mm-hmm.
building out a solution,
Mm-hmm.
deploying it. And if you've done the design well with the subject matter expert, by the way, the deployment becomes a lot easier
Right.
because that person's already bought in. You're
Mm-hmm.
making their lives easier. And by making their lives easier, you're making your operations more efficient.
Right.
Just make sure you also think about what to do with reinvested time because
Yes.
you're going to get it.
Right.
Okay. And that starts to compound when you do it over and over and over and over
Mhm.
again. And keeping track of these artifacts using things like the hybrid accountability chart, using things like your signal backlog and your source log and any of the other resources that we've talked through.
Mm-hmm.
Doing that will allow you to keep things organized, allow you to track your progress. And I promise you, might be 3 quarters, might be 4 quarters, might be a little bit more, but you'll start to see
Absolutely.
this compounding results.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it happens. We've seen it. So.
See it,
So-
live it.
Yeah, really, exactly. So set the meeting. Start thinking about it. Start moving it from conversation to discipline, and have a rhythm and a process and a framework to do it.
Awesome.
Yep.
Julie,
Here we go.
always a pleasure. I love these
Yeah.
conversations so much. I always look forward to them.
Yep, I do too. So everybody, thanks again so much for joining us. We learned a lot just even having these conversations, and the world of AI is moving all the time. So anyway, let's stop transforming, but let's start compounding.